Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, bonamilu wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, wherever you find your podcast. We have a very special episode today. We're giving you a sneak preview of a great new podcast coming to us from our friend Yobe Qiu. Yobe Qiu has been on the Reading with Your Kids podcast a number of times. She is a fantastic children's author, specializing in writing books that give representation to kids from all throughout Asia. And she's been a guest on the show a number of times. She's also become a friend. She's a new podcast coming out. It's called Rise and Shine with Yobe Qiu. And we are honored to be able to share with you episode 1 of Rise and Shine with Yobe Qiu.
Welcome to Rise and Shine with Yobe Qiu, stories of leading ladies in early childhood education. Join us as we celebrate and document the stories of remarkable women making a difference in this field. From educators and entrepreneurs, our guests share their unique perspective for some of the things they've learned. Get ready to be inspired, educated, and empowered. Whether you're an educator, a parent, or simply passionate about education entrepreneurship, this podcast is for you. Welcome, and let's dive in.
Hello everyone. Today we're very lucky to have my good friend Stacey Rees chatting with us on the podcast.
Stacey, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Stacey, and I am the owner of Island Kids in Northport, New York, which is on Long Island. And I have owned Island Kids. We are going into our 24th year. And so I own my center. We have coming this year, we'll have 13 classrooms, about 45 staff members. And I also have a husband and 4 kids of my own.
That's incredible. That's really incredible. I've been watching Stacey. I've been spying on her, stalking her on Facebook. We met during COVID time when all the directors and owners in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut kind of came together and formed this kind of Facebook group to chat about what are we going to do, how are we going to provide care to children in our centers during COVID. And I've just been watching Stacey living her best life, doing the best job for all of the children and the staff that she has. And I just kind of reached out to learn more about her because it's so inspiring to see someone in this business for so long. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started and what inspired you to do this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Yobe, you really, sort of met me, well, it was during a challenging time, obviously, but you met me like well into my career. So I feel like, after all these years, I finally have a lot of things figured out, not all of it, but a lot of things. But I went to school originally for pediatric physical therapy, and I graduated and I was working as a physical therapist in a school setting, in a school for children with special needs on Long Island. And I loved my job, but I found that I really wanted to be a classroom teacher. And so I went back to school and I got my master's degree in education. And at the same time, my husband, who was not my husband at the point, he was going to school for education as well. And so I sort of started talking about opening a small preschool or childcare program. And I was originally thinking like an in-home program, like really tiny. My husband has a little bit more of the business mindset, or did back then. And so we kind of took that idea and ran with it. And we met with our local school district who had some space for rent. And we developed a business proposal with the help of our local small business association. And we were young. We were, I think, 24 and 26 years old. And so we wrote this proposal fully expecting that they were going to turn it down. And it's the school district where we both graduated high school. And so for them, they thought this was a wonderful success story, and they said yes. And so once they said yes, we were like, oh boy, what are we going to do now? And we really just learned as we went. We started off, I think, with 3 classrooms. I was a teacher in one of the classrooms, and we were literally there from opening to close. We were there every night, every weekend. We didn't have any kids. We weren't even married yet. So we had plenty of time to do that. And we just kind of threw everything we had, like financially, emotionally, everything into the school. And luckily the community embraced us, and they came and they brought their children and they told their neighbors and their friends, and we just kept growing. So from 3 classrooms to now, like I said, 13 classrooms for this next school year. It's really been successful.
That's an incredible story, Stacey. I didn't even know that. That's so incredible. I mean, like, going into business when you're so young, it's one thing. Going into business with a boyfriend who's not married is another thing.
Yeah, we really took a leap of faith. And, so I come from a family where, my father had a traditional job, but then also helped run a family business on the weekends. And so he sort of gave me like the good, the bad, the ugly about owning your own business. And he was really very, honest with me about, what it would take, because he helped his father run his business for years. And so that didn't scare me away. I was determined. I was like, all right, Dad, I know all of like the risks and the potential stresses, and I still want to do this. And, so we just went for it, and we did tons and tons of research and reaching out and contacting people and really learning as we went. And still now, going into our 24th year, I'm still learning. And I say that to my teachers all of the time, that when I stop learning and I stop growing, then I know it's time for me to step out. Then I will be like, all right, it's time to retire, because I really feel strongly about the fact that I didn't want my school to remain stagnant. I didn't want to just do something and then keep it that way all of the time. I wanted to kind of grow with what the needs of the families in the community were, what the research and education was, and development. And so that's really important to me. And so that's what's, I think, kept us able to maintain our success, is that ability to grow our business and put money back into the business.
I'm so inspired by I know how hard it is to go from starting all the way to 24 years. I've worked with a lot of women in this business, and a lot of them sell, they quit. It's so hard. So can you tell me some of the things that you've seen changed over the last 24 years? That could be family dynamics, the hiring stages of training teachers.
Sure. I think there's many things that have changed. So one, regulations have changed a bit. And so we've had to constantly be on top of that and be ready to sort of meet new regulations, which sometimes even meant getting new equipment, because the cubbies that were allowed were no longer allowed. And we had to keep up with that, and education and training of staff. Staffing has definitely been much more challenging in the last several years. And even when we can find staff, keeping them, because for many staff members, it might be like a stepping stone to a public school teacher job. But we've found that by creating a really supportive community in our school, and by sort of providing mentorship for them, because I'm no longer the director, I've got 2 hired directors, and they deal with all of the day-to-day, the scheduling and payroll and human resources and all of that. It's allowed me to be more of a mentor to my staff, so they can feel open and comfortable to come to me. And so I just had a teacher who was with me for the last few years, and she is leaving for next year. She's got a job in the city as a 3rd grade teacher, but I'm not sad about it. I'm really happy for her. So I've been able to sort of get to that place where I understand it might be a stepping stone, and I'm happy to help them sort of get there. But many more people are willing to stay with us and grow with us. Family dynamics has changed a little bit. I feel like it's kind of we've had points where there was tons of demand for care, and then we had a slowdown, I think in like 2008, where a lot of families ended up keeping their kids home with family members due to financial concerns, and then things started to boom again, and COVID hit, and so then we had some families choosing to keep their kids home, but now we're really seeing a boom. We've seen a lot of families moving to Long Island, and so there are a lot of, especially demand for infant and toddler care. Our UPK program has expanded. The parents, we're very fortunate. The parents in our community are really great, and they are very involved in their children's education. So we're very fortunate to have that participation from the parents.
What would you say was one of your best memories working with? I mean, like with 24 years, it's hard to pick one. Or some of the best memories that you have with the families that you serve?
Right. Oh, so many memories over the years. So many events that we've done. So we host certain, parties throughout the year for the families, and the families are always very thankful to be able to come in and participate, in the school, with us. We even have some parents who now work for us and who had children that came to us and were students and graduated, and then the parents came back and work for us now. So that really, to me, is like, a really nice pat on the back that they wanted to come back and be part of our team. And we even have students who graduated from us who now work for us.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's really a very cool thing to be able to tell parents. We have alumni, children, and parents of alumni who've come back. It helps to keep that family feel, because as we grew, when we started, we really sort of prided ourselves on being, that small family feel and different than a lot of the chain centers that were popping up around the same time that we were opening. And as we grew, that was one of our things that we were nervous about. We didn't want to lose that. And so I think parents really like the fact that my husband and I both are on site, at least several days a week, and we're involved in every decision that's made there, and that we're accessible. So if they have a question or a concern that my administrators can't answer, they know that they can reach out to us, and we can get an answer for them.
So how does this affect your family and your children? I know that you have 4 children while growing the business of all of this change.
Right.
What was that like?
It was crazy. It was definitely crazy. So, like I said, when we started, we were not engaged or married. We had been dating for a long time. So within the first year of opening the school in 1999, we got engaged, and then, made plans to get married, and we bought a house. So we had a lot of things going on.
Goodness.
All those major stressors, right? Opening a business, getting married, buying a house. And so the first few years of the business, we didn't have any of our own children. And then when our first child was born in 2003, we didn't have infant care. So we didn't have infant care until our 4th child was born. So thankfully my mom lives nearby. And so she was the infant caregiver for my kids. And I could bring them to work with me. Sometimes I had a little area for them, but she helped out. And it was busy and it was difficult, especially I would say with my first 2 children, because I was a young new mom. They're very close in age. And so I always felt that conflict between being at work and being with my children. And as I have gotten older, I have realized that by my children watching me going to work and being successful, that really has given them so many life skills. Yeah. And so my kids are all older now. So they're 20 and 19 and 16, and my youngest is 11. And so I look at my daughters, especially I have 3 daughters, and the things that they've learned, I feel like from watching their mom, that really makes me very proud and makes me feel like, all right, I did the right things, even though, it's difficult when you're like in the thick of it and you're feeling pulled in 2 different directions. But they did lots of things with us. So they would come to the school and they would organize art supplies and set up classrooms. And my oldest daughter works for us now as an assistant teacher at the school. So
love that.
Yeah. It's kind of come full circle.
Yes, true family business here.
Yeah.
Is any one of them interested in running this?
Not necessarily. My oldest daughter is in school for education, but she wants to work in secondary education. She's wonderful with the little ones at my school, but her heart is really in working with middle school and high school age children. So she is going into her second year of college, and so she will continue her career in education with older children. And I don't know about my youngest two yet. I'm not sure. I think everyone will help in some way, I'm sure, as they do now. But I don't know if anybody will ever fully take over.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's really different now. I always think about when you start something and then when you feel like, I mean, you still love it because you still want to learn about it, but there's just so many new things to learn about all the time.
Right.
And as a preschool owner, how do you stay updated with the latest trends and research in early childhood education? And how do you implement them in your center?
So I'm an educator first, always. And I also consider myself a lifelong learner. So I love school. I love taking classes. So I go to classes constantly and conferences. And belong to, professional organizations. Social media has made it a lot easier too to kind of keep up with different people in the field and kind of compare notes. So that's been nice. And I started the silver lining of COVID was that I finally had completed my professional development credential. And so although I was already doing consulting and already doing workshops, now I can more easily do that and do it for a bigger range of centers in New York. And so now I go into centers or I do them virtually, and I really have found that I love working with adults and teaching other teachers and directors and owners. And so for me, that's sort of like how I renew my passion in the field, because after doing the day-to-day for a lot of years, I was kind of like, I don't want to do this part of it anymore. But I find now that I go out and I do the consulting, then I come back to my center and I sort of have like a newfound energy and enthusiasm for my own center, which is nice.
Yes. So when you go out to all of these centers, what do you see to be one of the major challenges these centers are facing?
I think most of the time centers are dealing with challenging behaviors from children. And so that's one of the most common questions I get asked, or one of the most common trainings I get asked about would be challenging behaviors as well as classroom management. Because I think a lot of new teachers come in and they don't realize how many things there are to balance and to manage. And so those would be the two, most popular ones. And I like to be able to show centers that it's often not behaviors that are the issue, but it's more the expectations of the adults in the environment, and how when we really understand development, then we can start to understand what we need to do in the classroom and the changes we need to make everything run more smoothly. And I also like to remind educators that, it's preschool. This is preschool. And so, of course, we want the children to get the most out of it. I want them to remember, though, that they have many years of education ahead of them. And the biggest thing is I want the children to come out loving school. So I want them to love their experience. I want them to come out and remember those teachers as teachers who were, nurturing and fun and enthusiastic. And so certain days I tell teachers, like, if it's just all not going right, you've got a group of 3-year-olds, just, throw the lesson plans out the window for the day and just sort of, pivot and do something else with them, because they are, the kids have the best ideas. They really do. And I'm like, if we just slow down and listen to them, they have such great ideas, and they're often better than our ideas as adults. So that's a big thing. I try to go into centers and get them to realize, like, really listen and really observe the children in your classrooms.
I love that. I feel like a lot of the teachers like daycare centers now have such long hours, and a lot of the teachers are really, really burnt out towards the end of the day. Like March is one of the hardest times. When I was a teacher, March, April was really tough.
Yeah, those are long months.
So like those are the months that I really work hard to remind myself why we're doing this, why I chose this job, why I chose to go to school for education in the first place. And just listening to the children is incredibly important. But it also, you need a nice boss like you who allows people to kind of just be like, do what the children need, do what you need, and kind of understand the dynamics of this job.
Right.
Like what are some tips that you can give owners and directors now to kind of lean into the teachers and the staff and kind of forget, because we have so much on our backs. We have like the health department, the regulations, the payroll, and all of these things on a day where everyone's just not kind of feeling it. What are some tips to help them get through that week or a day or month?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I look for in staff now is I don't expect everyone to come in with all of the knowledge, but I look for people who have a growth mindset and who really are, wanting to learn and who are willing to sort of put into the work to learn, who can, embrace different ideas and also who bring ideas to the school. So I always say to my staff, my ideas for our classrooms are very based in research and the things that I have learned. However, I'm always willing to learn more. So if you have read something different or you have something that you have learned about, bring that to me and we can incorporate that in. Sometimes teachers come in and they have all the credentials. So they have the degree and they went to a great school, but they just don't really have that growth mindset and they're not willing to sort of work as a team or try new things. And that I find much more challenging. I would much rather work with a teacher who comes in and who is honest and will say, I'm not sure, I need help. And then I can kind of help them and realize, let them know you don't need to know it all from the beginning. Like, take this in baby steps and I can help you grow. I also don't think take things personally anymore. So I think in the beginning, it was hard to not take things personally. If a parent was upset or an employee was upset, that really would weigh heavily on me. And it still obviously weighs heavily on me, but I use that as a time to say, okay, what can I do differently? And what can my administrators do differently? How did we not do a strong enough orientation with them? Have we not given them what they need to be able to perform? Or is it something that we've given them and now maybe we need to do a retraining? Or maybe this is just not the right fit for the school. And then sometimes it's talking to people and saying, is this really what you want to do? And sometimes people, have said, no, I think I want to do something different. And it's almost like giving them that permission to move on and do something different. Yeah. It's really all about communicating is what I find.
It really is. Whenever I work with a center and they're really stuck with one family and they said, this is such a challenging family. And I just kind of take them back and say, they're all just parents who are trying to live a better life for their kids. And you are trying to do a better job for your family and your staff and your business. It's the same things. As long as you come together and talk things out with respect and understanding, you can find a common ground there.
Yeah, the respect is a huge thing. And I try to, especially with staff that are newer and younger and maybe, don't have their own children, I always try to say to them, it's important to be respectful of families because they are, this is their child. And so they are the first and the most important teacher for these children. And so we need to be respectful and they all come from different backgrounds. They all have different values and cultures at home. And so we really just need to listen to what they're telling us. And, if we want to educate, that's fine, but we need to do that in a respectful manner while we're still honoring, their wishes for their children. And that can be difficult as a young teacher because I know when I was younger, and I didn't have my own kids, I would always say oh, I'll never let my kids do that. And then you become a parent and you let your kids do all of that.
Yes. That's so interesting. I still see myself doing that here and I was like, you gotta stop doing that, right? How is your husband involved in your business now?
So, when we started, we both were like everything, everywhere, all of the time. And then as we evolved, we kind of, developed our, job descriptions as we went. And so he is mostly on the business end of things. He does most of the things with the human resources and, liability insurance and the bills, accounts receivable, accounts payable. He does a lot. He has a really great eye for design, which is kind of a cool thing that, we've learned over the years that he really has an eye for designing classrooms and designing playgrounds. And so last summer we redid our playground and he really was the one who I sort of gave some ideas of what I wanted and he was able to visualize it and draw a whole drawing and help the landscaper figure out exactly how to design it. Whereas I can't like see that. I can't visualize that. So he does a lot of the ordering equipment and setting up the new classrooms, for us and the business end of things. He does not really do much with, the curriculum and the education part of it. He kind of, sends that all my way.
That's great.
Which is fine because that's the part I like to do.
I love that. Like, you're very lucky and fortunate to have someone in your life who you can completely trust with family and business. What do you say to other people out there that just don't have this person? Should they find a partnership? How should they go around doing this?
It can be very challenging because it is nice to have somebody that you can always share that with. However, there is that downside to it, right? Because we can never get away from it. So we have to like say to ourselves, okay, we're not going to talk about the business at home because it literally is in every conversation.
Is that possible though?
It is sometimes. It is possible. We've gotten better over the years with it. And as we sort of developed our job descriptions, and so I'm responsible for certain things and he's responsible for other things, that's made things easier too, because it's like, all right, fine, I'm doing my work and you're doing your work and we come together on certain things, but we're not kind of like stepping on each other's toes. But if you're by yourself, that's really difficult. So I say, if you've got the finances to hire people to help you, absolutely. And if you don't have the finances because you're just starting out, find a friend that you can talk to, because I still, a lot of times, that's where I turn to. I will turn to friends who, they may be in the education field, but they may not. But they're just good listeners and they can kind of, talk you through what's going on. They're moms themselves. And so they understand, even if they have a different career, how challenging it can be. Because I think for, women in the field, I think it's just different sometimes. It's just different as a mom, and in terms of how we, approach things many times. And so to have other, professional moms to talk to, it sort of makes you feel, that you're not alone in it. Because it can be lonely, right? When you're the owner or even when you're the director, you may watch all the teachers like having these little friendships and relationships outside of school, but that's really not, necessarily appropriate for an owner or director. So you start to feel like, okay, there's nobody here. So you have to go outside of, the center and find your friendships and find things that you like to do outside.
Right. Thank you so much, Stacey, for coming and talking to us today. I just have one final question before we wrap this up.
Sure.
If you're not doing this, what will you be doing?
Oh, that's a good question. I always joke with my kids. I always say, like, what do I want to do when I grow up? My 11-year-old's like, Mom, what do you mean you are grown up? And I'm like, no, there's always time to do new things. So I know we've talked about this. I definitely see writing a book in my future. I have a couple things, in the works that I play around with in my free time. I think I'll continue consulting probably for a very long time. I'd love to explore teaching on the college level, possibly. So I still see myself in this world of education for a very long time. It might just look a little different.
I'm so excited for you. I can't wait to read that book. Is it going to be a children's book or adult?
So right now I've started working on a book that's meant for adults, that's meant for moms in the workforce. I do have some children's book ideas with my 11-year-old. So if we could ever find the time to do that, that might be something we work on as well.
So excited for you. Thank you again for coming and sharing all of your insights with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
Anything you want to leave us with before we go?
Just to tell people to be patient and stay persistent and don't take no for an answer, because if it doesn't work, there's a way to make everything work. You might have to change your plan, but there's a way to make it work if it's truly what you want.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Rise and Shine with Yobe Qiu. We hope you found inspiration and valuable insight from our incredible guest today. If you know someone who deserves recognition or would like to nominate a leading lady in early childhood education to be featured on the podcast, we would love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to us at connect@yobeqiu.com. Remember to stay connected by subscribing to the podcast and following us on social media. We look forward to continue this incredible journey together.
We hope you've enjoyed this sneak preview of the brand new podcast from our friend Yobe Qiu, Rise and Shine with Yobe Qiu. Rise and Shine with Yobe Qiu is going to be available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Wherever you find your podcast, you're going to be able to find this great new podcast, Rise and Shine with Yobe Qiu. Please be sure to find it, subscribe to it, like it, tell all of your family and friends about this great podcast. In the meantime, we want to thank Yobe Qiu for allowing us to share this podcast with you. I also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, and O'Leary Soji Franklin. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place, and you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.